Good evening, all you junkies out there, and good morning to you international junkies. I was looking at the download numbers, and I could not believe how many international listeners, watchers we have, and that is absolutely freaking cool. So, hey, shout out to the international peeps. Tonight, episode 86, got my man Andrew Hall, FF. What's going on, Andrew?
Oh, any night we're talking football, Scott, you and me, it's a good time. I'm happy to be here.
Beautiful thing. And we have, as I'm sure you've seen now, we have the man himself from CBS, Heath Cummings. He is at Heath Cummings SR on Instagram, but more importantly, he is at Heath's Meat on Instagram. Sorry, at Heath Cummings on Twitter, at Heath's Meat on Instagram. And that is an incredible handle. You could take that. I mean, it just works on so many levels. And Heath, we're so honored that you're giving us some time tonight.
First time my introduction has ever included handling my meat, but I like it. No, and that's kind of the purpose, obviously, is that it's really fun when you have people over and you grill or you smoke something. And then, like, I don't have a lot of guy friends that are really active on Instagram, but it's funny when their wives like talk about how much they enjoyed coming over for dinner at Heath's Meat.
Well, buddy.
In all seriousness, no, that's probably my favorite hobby, other than fantasy football, is standing by the grill, smoking meat, drinking beer, and yeah.
So okay, what's your 101 of meat currently? I know it's going to change, right? Just like Dynasty, but
yeah, it depends on how deep the league is.
Okay,
because in a deeper league, I would definitely say it's pulled pork, because the pulled pork's never bad. Right. I don't like. I had my thermometer busted for a while. I didn't have a thermometer. I could just do a pulled pork on feel, and it's going to be fantastic. Do 2 pulled porks, 4 pulled porks, doesn't matter.
Good point.
But it doesn't have near as much upside as the brisket, in particular the burnt end, which is slicing off the point and then chopping it up and then cooking it again.
Glorious.
But there's some downside with, I mean, you might buy $100 slab of meat and it's tough. Yeah. So there's some downside with that. So it depends. In a shallow league, I would definitely take burnt ends, but in a deeper league, it's pulled pork.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. No, I mean, see, he's bringing it already, and man, this is a proud night for the DAP network, of course. Well, on that note, let's get right into it here. We're bringing the heat, we're bringing the meat, and we've got a little bit of everything tonight. So Heath, I want to ask you a question. This is something we always talk about, and we had the amazing Matt Waldman on last week, and he gave the correct answer. So we're going to test you and see if you do as well here. But are you a data guy or a film guy?
First off, I'm not sure if you understand how much pressure you've just put me under, because I started at Football Guys.
Yeah. Yep.
And my mentors / idols in fantasy football and in life during that period of time were Matt Waldman and Sigmund Bloom. There's an enormous amount of wisdom to be gleaned from those two, in all sorts of things. So I hope I don't say the wrong answer, but my answer has always been both, and I don't understand why you guys are such jerks to each other.
Thank you.
Why would we think that we could completely do it on a spreadsheet? And why would we think that math is bad? I think they're both very, very helpful. If I had to lean one direction, I might lean slightly towards analytics, but that's not to say anything negative about the other.
Of course. Yeah, no, that's perfect. It just kind of gives us a little bit of an idea of, where you come from and what you're looking at. Right.
And I would also say that, because like in my current situation at CBS, during the football season, I don't watch college football, because if I did, I wouldn't have a wife or kids who live in my house. Yeah. I watch more college football in February and March, but what I do more than anything is I lean on Matt Waldman. What he puts out each year for the draft class is an enormous help. It makes the entire industry smarter.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure. Without a doubt. Yeah. The RSP is absolutely incredible. I found it like 3 years ago, and I don't know. It's not, I don't know if I could say it's life-changing, but it's for me, it is, because my life revolves around this. So yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say something I didn't get to tell Matt last week, but I feel like I should have, is that I have been late for 3 meetings for work because I've been watching or following his threads. Like he puts the thread up about something and I'll just get like engrossed in it. And then I get a call from my boss. I'm like, oh crap, I'm 10 minutes late to that. Like, oh my, it's happened 3 separate times all last season. And I'm telling you, he just, the way he writes, the way he engages, it's like, I just digest that so well. So I'm right there with you, Heath. I listen to the smart people. That's what makes me smarter, for sure.
Well, there's another area right there with me because I don't know if I'm the only one, but since the whole work from home thing and all the Zoom meetings started, I didn't used to miss meetings when we were in the office and we were all going to the same room. Now, when I'm supposed to remember to be looking at my camera at the right time, no chance. Like just regularly not there, maybe not even at my house. I'm not doing the thing that you're wanting me to do at this time.
Yep. That makes total sense. We actually had a guy in one of our meetings this past week who was at the emissions check for his car. He's like, sorry, I'm getting my car emissions checked. And we're just like, all right, you got to do what you got to do. So life is a weird thing sometimes.
I will neither confirm nor deny the fact that I checked into a recent meeting from a Total Wine.
There you go. Fun meeting.
Hey,
put it
like
on
I
mute.
said, you got to do what you got to do, right? I mean,
That's right.
So we've got the underwear Olympics going on. I think they're currently still going right now. I was just watching the wide receivers a little bit ago. The big thing right now is the hand size and all that. Oh God, his hands are so small. It just everyone knows what that means. Small gloves. I mean, and so that's where we're going.
I used that joke a lot in high school because I had size 15 shoes when I was in 9th grade. So there's a lot of big sock jokes.
Are you tall, Heath? You seem tall.
I am tall compared to the general population. I played basketball and I coached basketball, and so I was never really tall in that regard.
But you're tall in spirit.
6'2".
Yeah. See, nobody knows this about me because we're just on our little podcast here and you can't tell. But then I stand up and you're like looking at my shins because I'm 6'5". So people don't.
And see, people like you get that. Really kind of grind my gears because I spend my whole life looking down upon the world. All the normal people are smaller than me. And then every once in a while I run into somebody. I'm like, what? I have to look up at this jerk? Like, squat or something.
Listen, I never felt that way until I was 6 feet from Yao Ming and it completely ruined me. I mean, I now feel like I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain it. It was a very strange experience.
Yeah. But welcome to the rest of us. I'm 5'11", so I'm right there with you.
Perfectly.
Well, so that's how you guys feel. I get it. Okay.
Yeah, it's how we feel all the time around you jerk. Exactly.
So Heath, is the combine, is there anything you take away from it, or do you just think, we see these guys on film, we have, maybe we're getting some of their numbers. Some numbers are coming in as far as like actual height and weight. That's kind of helpful as far as figuring out, who these guys are, what roles they might fit. But is there anything you really take away that's going to help you from a fantasy aspect?
I think especially now in the era where everybody's doing, I'll do 3 of the tests, I'll do 4 of the tests. I'm only doing 2 of the tests. Not really. When you got the whole picture, like if you had 2 guys that did all the testing and had legit Spark scores and you could compare apples to apples, then I kind of like that. I will maybe use it as a tiebreaker or something. But like I said, before we were on air, like the thing that I've been thinking about, because apparently all the wide receivers today ran in the 4.2s. Is that good? Like, is there a point where you're too fast? Because I can't remember any wide receivers who ran that fast who were good.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's one that I'm not thinking of. But all the really fast guys have mostly not been good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, John Ross comes to mind and some other guys like that. But also, I mean, some of those skill sets were just speed. They didn't have the route running. They didn't have, those other things. So, but yeah, I generally agree with you. I think it is nice to get some of the stats and some of that information, but really more, I'm just like, I think I'd enjoy it more in person, just kind of looking at these guys. I'll never forget when I first saw Calvin Johnson in person. And again, here's that experience for me as, I'm 6'5", I've grown up as an athlete, I've been around, guys like not necessarily NFL caliber, but, athletes, people. And, then you just see Calvin Johnson and you just go, wow. I mean, how is this guy not going to be good? If he can only do two things, he's still going to have some role, right? And so sometimes it's just like being more in person or seeing that. You get a little bit of that on TV. Right. There was one guy that jumped out to me today, a wide receiver who's wearing number 15. I actually don't even know who it is. I didn't have time to watch and see who it was, but it was a wide receiver wearing number 15. He kind of stuck out to me in just doing those. It was quarterback drills. It wasn't even wide receiver drills, but I saw him and I was like, who's that guy? And so maybe I'll just keep that mental note. It's just something small.
Just look out for number 15.
But
You get to the fourth round of your rookie draft and you're like, I don't really like any of these guys. Give me number 15.
Exactly.
Oh, you can't change that number. You're always 15.
Exactly.
No, but I do think like as someone who produces content, it's helpful because it's some nice filler for the article.
The data point.
So-and-so who ran a 4.26, did 15 reps on the bench press. It's nice filler.
Yeah. Hey, Justin Ross, let's go, baby.
That's true. Well, I was actually looking this up too to answer your question. Tyreek Hill ran a 4.29 apparently.
There we go.
I mean, like that's
but he wasn't at the combine.
No, that's not what we're talking about.
Oh, so that's only a 4.33.
Yeah, it's an unofficial.
Anything that happens in a pro day, I think you have to have a second to.
There are some fast guys in the NFL. Maybe he's the only one that worked. I don't know.
I don't remember the kid's name. This is kind of probably embarrassing for me, but the Baylor kid who ran the 4.21 today. Have they confirmed that is a record yet? Because I couldn't figure it out. It was like 20 minutes later. It's on Twitter, and it's like he ran a timed 4.21, not official yet.
Yeah, Tyquan Thornton.
Yeah, how is it not official? They ran it. It's done.
What? Like, are they gonna like use the tape to check it?
I think they go back and they make sure that the clocks are right. I think that they go back after all of them are done and make sure that they're accurate before they call them official. But I don't remember a time where any of them changed. I guess if that makes any sense. Like I don't remember there being a controversy like, oh, so and so is now 0.3 seconds slower. Everybody is like if it's one, it's all of them at this point. You know what I mean? Like the clocks just have to be off. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how this whole thing works anyway. It's all kind of made up. To me, this whole combine feels kind of imaginary, right? Like, well, who really cares anyway?
I mean, in fairness, we're doing a podcast about a game that we made up on the internet based on another game that somebody else made up for adults.
Yep. And the combine is a game within a game of its own, right? So we're talking about a game within a game about another game within that same other game, right? It's all made up. I completely agree. It's fantastic. And it's the fantasy.
Hey, it's already in the name. We don't have to defend it, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons for football people. That's right.
That's enough about the combine for me, honestly, because literally the other 30 podcasts I listen to are going to be talking about it. So not like I listen to myself, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But for the listeners, we love you, and we're not going to. Everybody's talking about rookies, so just listen to all of our other DAP Network friends, and you can get all that. But I want to talk about startups. Let's talk about startups, not only because it's startup season, but also because this is where we're getting some of our strongest value right now for trade scenarios. There's been a lot of great conversations that have come up. Andrew and Rocky and I have been talking all day about trades because of, scenarios we think could happen with teams and free agents and draft picks and, what's going to happen with these guys. And then we look at startups and we say, well, where did they go in the startup? And how does that relate to their value when I'm trying to make these trades in my leagues that already exist? Right. So Andrew, I know you're in the middle right now of a C2C startup. Is that correct? You did the college one first.
Correct.
And now you're doing the NFL one. Is that correct?
Yeah. And I want to say this so that it's on podcast for posterity reasons. This is my first ever C2C, Campus to Canton. For all those that may not be familiar, it's the deepest Devy thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Before this, I had, the deepest Devy league I was in. I think I had 2 Devy spots. And I think it was okay, but it wasn't that intimidating. This one was a 35-round college football draft where I'm literally drafting players like on Madden. I'm like, I've never heard that name before. Like, let's see what that guy can do. And I'm literally just trying to make sure that they exist in reality before I type the name on the sheet. I'm like, I don't even like like Herkel McCringleberry, you know what I mean? Like it reminded me all of that. But I did enjoy that because it made me do a whole different batch of research that I've never done before.
Oh yeah, it's like Googling 5-star recruit 2027 or something
I'm
like that.
finding 18-year-old kids
right?
that their parents are posting on Facebook. You know what I mean? Like that's the guy. Like that's who I'm going with. Like, I don't know. Like I got nothing. So the college part was interesting. After the first 2 rounds, I didn't know anyone. But I am in the NFL side now, which is a lot more familiar.
So when you do that, and I've not done a full, I mean, I know I'm very familiar with it, but I've not done one. Are you people eligible for the NFL draft right now? Are they in the college side or the NFL side?
NFL side.
NFL.
Yeah. So the way that this one is done through the guys at the Devi Royale, shout out the Devi Royale guys. They're doing a different kind of campus to Canton. What they're doing is it's a Power 5 on the college side and it's best ball. So you don't need to set a lineup on the college side. There's a whole bunch of weird stuff that happens on Saturdays. Like we were talking earlier, we all have lives, you know, like it's tough to watch a lot of college. So that way it's best ball Power 5. So you're not getting too deep. You're not finding the Jackson State guy, you know what I mean? Like that's going to be in the supplemental draft that happens, you know, every year that we have with our rookie draft in theory. So it's instead of a rookie draft. But yeah, so we're in the NFL side, which is a lot more familiar, but anyone that's declared for the draft is in that NFL draft. And so again, this is also the first time I've done a startup before the NFL draft with actual players, I should say. I've done it with rookies before, rookie picks, right? Or you've done an NFL draft and it's a snake and then the rookie draft is the reverse or, you know, things like that. I've never done one where there are actual player names available to draft. So it's a whole bunch of new experiences. And I'm like, you know what? I love the Devi Royale guys. Like I like learning more about college players. So yeah, let's give it a try. But it is interesting. Let's just put it that way. There's a lot of names that I did not expect to already go. Let's put it that way. When they're names, the values change drastically. Let's put it that way.
Yes, that's exactly a point that I wanted to make was everything changes when you change that pick number to a name, because we actually broke down your league. I
can't wait to hear that. Actually, I haven't listened to it yet.
P2W network. John McGlynn and Kyle Center and I broke down like the first 8 rounds or so, and we actually we didn't mean to really go through pick by pick and talk for as long as we did, but it was just so fascinating as to how you guys did it, and knowing that you did the college side first, whereas the C2C we did the NFL side first. And then college. And so again, that's going to change strategy too, because you kind of know what your college guys are and who's coming up and where your strengths might be, you know, and then you can maybe base your NFL off of that. Whereas we did NFL first and then we figured out college and we're like, you know, again, 45 rounds. I have no idea who these guys are. And how do I even figure out who's going to be good or not? I just didn't worry about it. But Heath, are you in any Devi leagues at all, from not necessarily a C2C, but have you done a Devi startup? Are you in any Devi leagues where you have experience with trying to figure out these Devi guys way before any of the Dynasty players know them?
The closest thing I've done is, you know, John Bosch puts on the eliminators every year, and I do as many of those as I can through my name. And at the end, I always like to try to throw my name in a few that are somebody else's. And I did one of the college eliminators last year.
Okay.
Which was a weird, hey,
that's right. Yeah. League winner, baby.
There we go.
League winner, baby.
There we go. Cute.
That's right.
Wow.
Represent.
That's amazing that I had that right there. I'm glad.
Same. I know.
Otherwise,
haven't put it on my wall yet. It's awesome.
But no, I've not done the full on the Devi, but it sounds absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it's different.
Terrifying.
It's very different. It's very different.
Well, so the startup is interesting because it's all potential, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just who do I think is going to be good in 2, 3, 4 years, right? Like, nobody knows, right? So it's literally like, it's just all upside, right? It's just like just who do I think is a name that could be cool in the NFL at this point? You know, like, I would
assume it's just you're going almost by recruiting rankings too.
Yeah, and like 24/7 Sports has a lot of that where, you know, it kind of ranks them out and you can get a grade and it shows you other, which is nice, I guess. But at the same time, that's just one guy's opinion anyway. Like that's that's Earl, who saw the guy run in Alabama and it's the 38th best running back in Alabama. Like, who knows how accurate that is? And then in 3 years, who knows if he's even going to have legs left to run in the NFL? Like, you know, there's a whole bunch of risk in college. So it's just, you know, so yeah, it's interesting. I do love it though. I'm got to be honest. Like, it's interesting drafting that way. And with actually what you're saying, Scott, the strategy I went in with the college side was it's a super flex on both sides. So I wanted to get a good quarterback, at least in the early rounds, and then a good running back or two, because I tend to do Dynasty where the rookie picks are more running back heavy. If I had to pick, I'd rather them be running backs because they tend to land and produce right away. right? With receivers and tight ends, you kind of, you might have to wait a couple years. You might get, your Andy Isabella, your N'Keal Harry, where they're huge draft capital, but they just don't do anything. That rarely happens with running backs. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, Trey Sermon, but it definitely happens less often, right? Where it's like, I feel like running backs can be a little more reliable. So I wanted to draft some running backs early in my college side. And then in the NFL side, I got Dalvin Cook as like my RB1. And I'm like, I like that I got the young running backs on my college side. So I could kind of go a little older with my RB1 in the NFL. Right. So again, to what you were saying, Scott, it kind of played perfectly where, my strategy going in kind of held true, but I also got lucky. So I don't know if I want to call it entirely genius, but I'm okay with it.
I just want to go back and thank you for saying Andy Isabella and N'Keal Harry and not saying Hakeem Butler, because I still have tremors when I hear Hakeem Butler. But
Paris Campbell, anyone? I mean, like, there's so many names that were like supposed to be amazing.
But, bringing it back to this year, like, it does feel like there's 3 running backs that are probably going to land in pretty good spots, and we're going to like them a lot. And then there's like 17 wide receivers that probably need to go next.
But then 3 of them will be good. And so which 3? And which 3 do we pick? I don't know. Like,
and then we'll see if Jalen Willis goes top 10. And if he does, then we can take him in the first round too. But besides that, it's going to be
draft capital is going to matter a lot.
Yeah,
yes.
That's right.
Landing spots, of course, but draft capital too, right? Yeah, I agree.
I was thinking about reaching for Kenny Pickett, but then I couldn't grab a hold of him with the tiny hands. So just slipped right
zinger. Fumbled that pick.
Andrew, are you able to pull up that? Are you able to share that a little bit? That startup.
Sure. And I don't think anyone in this league is going to care either. I'll be honest. So I will share that. Hang on, just one second here.
Just so we can.
I don't know how much we want to get into it, but I definitely.
I just want to look at a few of the picks in relation. So here's what I was comparing to. We did a startup here with the CKC chat and from Trade Addicts, and our startup had rookie picks and Devy picks in the startup. So you would actually pick the slot, not the player. Okay. Yeah. So now when you're saying, okay, the Devy pick 101 went in this spot, and the rookie pick 101 went in this spot. Now I'm going to look at yours and go, okay, well, the first rookie went actually at this spot, and so again, here's the name versus the pick value, right? And obviously there's a little strategy difference here. And ours isn't quite as deep. We had 36 Devy players in this one, so it's obviously not nearly as deep. But again, it's very interesting once you start putting the names to it, where they start going, and actually how much they move up or down in some cases, but mostly up is what it looked to be. So I believe yours is a super flex and a tight end premium. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's super flex, half point PPR, and then half point extra for tight ends, which I think it's a good mix. That gives it full PPR for tight ends. But I mean, I'll kind of quickly run through mine. You can see it on the screen here, but I got the 7th pick, and it was actually kind of cool. We did a random lottery to like pick your pick. And then it was a snake draft for 2 rounds. And so you got to pick whether you picked on the college or the NFL side. So like you could pick, well, the 3rd pick on the college is available, I'll take that. But then your 2nd round pick was, much later. So I ended up going in the middle of both because I don't have a clue what I'm doing in this league. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to get stuck on a run. Like, just give me in the middle. There was 3rd round reversal too, which was interesting. So it just a whole bunch of fun stuff. This is a terrific league. But so I got the 7th overall pick, and I'm a Bengals fan, unabashedly so, right? Homer pick. It's in every podcast, my Bengals here. So I get to the 7th pick, and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow are both on the board, and it's super flex, but I had to go Jamar Chase. Like, that guy is he's too generational for me. It's start 3 receiver, 2 running back, and 2 flex. So again, with 3 receiver as a start, I'm like, I kind of want to go Chase there. There could be some positional scarcity at some point. 2nd round, I went with Tyreek Hill. Again, just loading up, just taking the value as it comes to me. I went with Stafford as my QB1. There were a couple of trades that we made during this, but I got Stafford and Tua as my QBs. And then, like I said, Dalvin Cook as my RB1. Pat Freiermuth I think is a stud young tight end. I think he's going to have a long career as my tight end there at the 5th round. Traded away my 6th, but then I got Cam Akers as my RB2 in the 7th, which, again, astounding to me. Mike Evans in the 8th. I can't believe he's still there in the 8th. Michael Carter in the 9th, David Bell, who just ran a slow 40 for someone who's faster than I'll ever run in my lifetime, in the 10th round, Jared Goff, who everybody's down on, but not a bad QB3, and then Devin Singletary and DJ Chark kind of rounding out the current picks, and that's where we are right now.
Was Chase the first non-QB?
No, Cup actually went 103 to our buddy Nate Polvote, who I thought that was an interesting pick to me. I'll be honest. We all were a little, I wouldn't say shocked, but we were commenting on it like, ooh, Cup, third overall, and ahead of guys.
We
Like
consensusly disagreed with that pick, but also we remembered, we gave him a little credit that we don't know what his college roster looks like, because this is maybe the oldest startup roster I've ever seen, and there's literally no quarterbacks for a super flex. Now maybe his first 3 picks in the college side were quarterbacks, and so he's like, hey, I'm going to hang in for a year and then I'll get one of these guys next year. So I don't know what his college side looks like, in all fairness.
Pull that up.
But yeah, he's that's wow. Cup, Eckler, Kelsey, your first 3 picks.
Well,
in 2 years, those guys could be completely irrelevant.
I think that's a good talking point, though, because if you're going to go that old, then I'm not sure you can wait on quarterback. Like, you have to have starting quarterbacks,
kind of
because
what we were talking about.
You've got a handful of players who might be worth nothing next year, or a third round pick next year.
Declining. Yeah.
Right. So this is like, I love Eckler, Cup, and Kelsey on a win now team, but I don't know how you can be win now if you don't have a quarterback.
Well, so just for clarity, so I feel like this is worth adding. Nate's a friend. Let's be careful here. So
of course we want to be fair with,
his first round pick was Zachary Evans, running back out of TCU in the college side. Second round pick was Spencer Rattler, QB out of Oklahoma. He didn't take another QB until the 5th round, it looks like, which was Phil Jurkovic out of Boston College.
Ooh,
and then 7th round, Ty Thompson out of Oregon. Oregon. And then 9th round, Haynes King out of A&M. So he did go kind of QB heavy in the college side. And I think the logic that I would look at there is, I wouldn't say any of those are studs, but that's a lot of options, right? It's like, one of these guys is probably going to hit. One of these guys might be able to come back and be a QB. So I'll be able to take Cup and go, okay. And again, maybe I'm reading I think I'm reading some, because the 3rd round reversal is getting me. So I apologize. He's actually got DJ Ugalele from Clemson, not Jurkovic. Yep, that's much better. And then I'm reading, because this is a Google sheet, so it's a little tricky for me. But that's really his only other QB then. So he's got Rattler and Ugalele, which again, that's not terrible, but he doesn't go that much after that.
Yeah. I mean, he's obviously going to go try it. Listen, I just did a similar strategy in mine where I was like, everybody's going young. Everybody's going for these picks. And you know what? I'm looking at this value on these vets. I'm just going to win now. If I win the first year or even the first 2, then I'm playing with house money and I can do my retool, rebuild, whatever. That's fine. So I don't have a problem with that strategy at all. But the fact he took Cup at 103, I got Cooper Cup at 302. So, you look at that and it's like, also Travis Kelce, he took at 310. I took Kelsey at 502. So again, there's, when you're talking about having a top quarterback where he probably could have gotten Cup with that 2nd or 3rd pick and then still had one of those elite quarterbacks. So
part of this league though is it's a fun group of guys. Like, we're all in this for the fun and the learning and all this. And so it's kind of just like, go get your guy. It's not a high buy-in. It's more for learning and I think that has to be said too. I think if you're having
Jeff
fun, who
Kevin
cares?
In there, right? You guys are screwed on the Devy side.
Trust me, we all know it. We've all said it. Like, there's no way we're winning a college side with the Devy Royale guys. Like, oh my God. Those 3 are terrific at knowing who to pick. There are times they pick players I've never heard of, and then they were like high-fiving each other, and I'm like, oh crap. Like, that's I should write that name down for 2 years from now.
Right, exactly.
So the only other team that I really wanted to discuss, I guess, in general, and we can even maybe pick on some of those guys too, but like, Jeff did a lot of trading, but Jeff sniped me on this. I was trying to trade up to the 111. He ended up trading in and getting his start was 1st round Kyler Murray and Joe Burrow.
Love it.
And I'm like, well, that's a start, right? And then his receiver 1 was Higgins. And then he got Godwin, Amon-Ra, Olave for the OSU fan, and Jeff, and Gabriel Davis. That's a solid crew. He's got Gesicki and Hawkinson as his tight ends. Running backs, he's going young, Breece Hall and Alexander Madison, and that's it so far. So again, looking at the logic of a Devy league, like, it makes sense to be light on running back. I get the logic, and it's like, I wish I would have known this, but it's nice to learn from this. And I think that is a stud team, in my opinion. That is a terrific team. And I'm pissed that he sniped me on Burrow. He sent the offer right before I did, and Christian, his buddy, said, yeah, sure, why not? I'll give it to you, before I could really get my trade through to Kevin. So yeah, it's all good. I'm not jealous. I'm not upset. But yeah, that's a terrific team.
Yeah, no doubt. So I think a couple notable things for me. How far Dak fell. The fact that like Lance and Fields going over Dak is like, like
Lance
have
and
you
Fields going over
seen
Dak. Yeah.
the Chicago Bears organization? Like what? I just no. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I have no explanation. I can't even wrap my head around it. But
your guy.
Yeah. Anyway. So veterans tend to fall in startups. We know this, right? But once we start putting those rookie names in, and I was trying to correlate a couple of these here. But Spiller and Hall went there in the middle of the 6th round. And in my startup here at the similar picks, let's see. Sorry, what is that?
While you're doing that,
605 and 66. Here, I've got it. It's rookie pick 103 went at the same, at the same time. So does that make sense? It probably does. That's one of those that I think correlates. Could you have one of those guys at 103? Yeah, you could. So I think that definitely makes sense. The quarterbacks are very interesting where you had again, the young guys, Zach Wilson going way up there above some of these guys. Malik Willis in there with above Pickett. That makes sense to me, right? As of right now, with the information that we have. But then you start looking down the line here a little bit. Some of these wide receivers, I don't know that they really match up. Okay, Garrett Wilson at 501, for example.
Running back 2, second overall rookie.
I trust Kevin knows what he's doing with Debbie because that's what he does. So I'm cool. And then what he does after that with the receiver position, I think it works out fine. But you're telling me you took Garrett Wilson over, I don't just any of these next guys really, like literally name any of them. And then even I think Devontae Adams went 408. So you took Treylon Burks over Devontae Adams. Like that again, that to me, I've seen Treylon Burks play. I think he's awesome. He's great. Can't wait for him. I'm excited. But over Devontae Adams, Heath, I don't know if you have any thoughts about any of that, but I was very confused by some of this stuff.
I think it fits with the idea that until they play a game, rookie picks only gain value.
Bingo.
And they're just going, like, we had this little period of time for the last 2 months or so, maybe 3, where 2022 was the worst rookie class ever, and none of them were ever going to be any good. And all of the first round was going to be offensive linemen and defensive players, and maybe
trade out. They're terrible.
Definitely no skill position players. Maybe Malik Willis could go 30th. And then a bunch of wide receivers run 4.2s, and everybody's realizing that Breece Hall and Spiller are awesome. And I think we probably get to April, and it just kind of feels like a normal rookie draft. Now, we won't know until 2 or 3 years from now until if the guys are any good or not. Maybe they won't be. And I do think running back is exceptionally shallow, is what it feels like to me right now. Like there's 3 good running backs. But I think it's just more evidence that these guys, these picks are going to be worth more a month from now than they are right now. And the names, the guy, especially if we get Hall landing in a spot where he's got 250 carries waiting for him, and Spiller lands somewhere like Arizona where they're going to use him in the passing game, they're going to skyrocket up draft boards.
Yeah. And I think that's the catch. That's the upside, right? That's what you're hoping for, is that they land somewhere great. But I mean, you put Spiller on the Jets. Okay, now what? Right now you got Michael Carter and Isaiah Spiller splitting carries. Like that's not what you wanted. Like that's not ideal. Does that hurt his draft capital in fantasy drafts? Maybe.
Then but did Kenneth Walker go where we were hoping Spiller would? And then Walker's all of a sudden where Spiller was.
Right. The whole, we see it every year, right? The Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor debate, right? Where, he went in the first round. He needs to go. He was the first running back taken. He's better. That haunts me
careful.
Still too. Well, you're not alone on that. There's a lot of people that haunted, but I'm looking at it more of doing this before the draft. Again, it's interesting seeing the names. I've only ever done the picks, and I like exactly what you said, though. I like taking the pick because you're not risking as much. With the player, there's a ton of risk, right? We don't know where they're going.
Yes.
We don't know where these players are going to land yet. So it's like, I'm going to take this based on talent alone. And talent sometimes is tremendous, but if talent doesn't get draft capital, or a non-talent gets draft capital, kind of like Clyde or even like a Tutu Atwell, right? Like one of those guys like just gets boosted up because, well, someone must have liked him. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want Tutu Atwell on my teams. Like, oh God, like, you know what I mean? But he was a second round pick. Well, they didn't have any other picks. Like, so there's a whole bunch of context that's missing. So yeah.
So, I mean, Treylon Burks went 404, and in my draft, Jalen Hurts went 404, but more importantly, at 406 went the actual rookie pick 101. So you're saying here, you're basically saying I am all in on Treylon Burks, and I believe he's going to be an absolute stud. Versus in my side, I could have taken the 101 at that point. I can wait. Now I've got
time to figure
combine,
it out.
I've got free agency, I've got the draft, and then I could say I could trade that for a proven player, or okay, I guess I could still take Treylon Burks if he's really my guy, but at the same time, I think that pick to me has far more value than that name, because Burks, you're not going to be able to trade that. You're not going to be able to trade him for a proven player, a proven quarterback, likely, unless everything breaks the right way and he's just exploding up the boards, I mean, and it's highly unlikely. So
do those picks go for less in the Devy leagues where you're going to have a bunch of college players too? Because that seems really cheap to me for the 101 in a dynasty startup where you're involving picks. 101 is going to go much earlier than that, I think.
So it depends on the class. I think that's kind of what he's saying too. Like the 101 this year is not a Tua Tagovailoa. It is not a Trevor Lawrence, right? There is no like stud quarterback in Superflex that's rocketing up the board. But I also think that we don't know landing spots, so there's some hesitation. It lowers the cost right now. But I think the other catch that I think Scott is hitting on here is that 404 Treylon Burks could go up a little bit, but I think the 406 101 could go up more.
Yes.
Right. And that's kind of what I think that the delta
or it gives me options.
Well, true. And that's actually a lot of it
different.
That's a lot of it too, is that you could take Treylon Burks with that 101, but you might not want Treylon Burks. You might like, hey, I like a quarterback there and I'm going to take a quarterback.
Well, the 101 could be anything, Andrew.
Could even be a boat.
Exactly.
We love that line.
So that's really, the point there. I mean, and actually at that point, the Devy 104 went at 405 and the Devy 105 went at 407. So right in that value spot, this draft could not be any different than your draft, right? And isn't that crazy? We're doing two drafts with similar settings at the very same time of year, and it's completely different.
I want to clarify this for our listeners, right? We're talking about a single draft. This is by no means ideal. This is by no means commonplace. This is more of like, it's an example to show that your draft, your startup is going to be different than every other startup you've ever done, anything else you'll see online. So I think that's why I always ask for context whenever I get asked a question, because it's like every league is so unique, right? Like, is this a free league that you joined for nothing and just are messing around? Or is it like a bunch of friends that you're just, screwing each other over and drafting everybody that the other guys want just to mess with them? Like there's all that stuff in a startup, especially where it's just like, man, who knows? Like this is just for fun. We're having a good time. Like, there's no negative. Everybody does what they want to do. I mean, like it's mostly just a fun league to try to get people involved in a deeper Devy style and a college to campus version with that Power 5 best ball. So it's like, let's just have a good time with this. It's another podcast, friends of our podcast, just trying to have a good time. That's the whole point.
Yeah, no doubt. So what I want to do is I want to get some names from Heath too, some of his maybe off season here, non-point scoring season, as we call it. Some values, some buys, sells, whatever. And I want to start us off because we talked about it in your draft and the same as mine as well. This player went in about the same spot, and his name is DJ Moore. He went at the 403 in my draft. He was the wide receiver 9 taken. He was the wide receiver 10. I'm sorry, the wide receiver 10 taken in both of our drafts. So he fell into the exact same slot wide receiver wise. But DJ Moore has finished 39th, 16th, 23rd, and 18th his 4 seasons in the league. He's still 24 years old. There's so much potential. But yet this guy, he just can't finish above wide receiver 16 apparently. And he continues to be massively overvalued in my opinion. I would like to hear from our listeners how many championship teams had DJ Moore on it, honestly, because I just don't think there are very many. There is something to be said for a wide receiver too, but I'm sorry, he's not winning you weeks. He's not winning you leagues. I have no interest in drafting him in the 4th round of a startup or as clearly well inside a wide receiver 1 when he's never finished better than 16.
Are you trying to get kicked out of the dynasty industry?
I am.
Not know.
I am.
I do not.
I am. I cannot stand DJ
Sacred
Moore.
Cow, DJ Moore.
You know, and here's
the
crazy
Scott
thing is
doesn't care.
I love DJ Moore coming in. I love him as a rookie. I really do. He's actually a great kid. If you like heard him at all, I love DJ Moore as a human, as a football player. I really like DJ Moore. He's one of my favorite receivers to watch, just like Debo. I love me some Debo, right? I've said that on here many times, but it doesn't mean I'm going to buy into them necessarily. DJ Moore, just it makes no sense to me. How many years are we going to do, the potential thing? Well, he's only 24. He's been in the league 4 years, guys. Like, when are we going to get over this?
This is the year, man.
He's Devontae Parker now.
I
5th year breakout.
I think I'm like I have him 13th at wide receiver in my most recent update.
Okay, that's a little
dynasty rankings, right? Dynasty rankings.
Dynasty rankings.
Yeah.
So and so I'm maybe a little lower than where he's going.
I mean,
in these drafts.
youth plays into that, and so
Right.
you have him right. Okay, that I mean that's reasonable. Listen, 10 isn't crazy, but it doesn't make sense to me.
No, you're
how many
right.
times we're going to do this over and over again.
What's the Big Lebowski quote? No, I won't say that one out loud.
Yeah, you can say
You can. This is the one you can say
can say
anything on. We
Yeah,
can say
yeah,
it.
you're not wrong. You're just an asshole.
Yeah.
It's, but no, I think you're right. The thing is, like, it's very easy if you were a DJ Moore truther, if you believe he's a top 10 wide receiver, to say, look at how bad his quarterbacks have been. And you're right.
Okay.
But I don't see a path to Carolina drastically improving that this year. And so then next year, and you gave him credit, you said he's currently 24, and that's true. I generally use what's the player's age going to be next year, week 1, and that's going to be 25.
Okay.
So like, are you telling me that in a year from now, when he's turning 26, then, because I don't think it's going to be this year that he makes the big leap. What's going to be the impetus for that? It's not, there's no quarterback salvation coming.
Well, we don't know that, right? Like, that's the
Probably
other catch.
not.
I agree that there probably
Deshaun
isn't, but
Watson is possible.
Well, this is where I'm saying, like, to kind of hit on this again, I think a lot of the reason for the ceiling talk maybe on DJ Moore is that, well, okay, so they traded for Darnold. He must be the guy. And then, okay, he's not the guy, but they're going to get someone else, and then he's going to be the guy. It just feels like there's always, and I hate to say it this way, but it feels like there's always an excuse, right? Like there's always like some out that can give truthers a little bit of, false hope maybe. I don't know if I call myself a DJ Moore truther. I did just trade Rocky Petrella, our third host of the Dynasty Junkies. I did just trade him for Hawkinson in a package, right? Where it's like, I didn't feel like it was a terrible trade. I was like, I really like Hawkinson. I think he's going to have a better potential and everything. It's a tight end premium league. So like Hawkinson values a little bit more to me. But he traded, it was DJ Moore plus for Hawkinson in theory. And I was like, well, I mean, I'm rebuilding. It was a dispersal draft. So I kind of come into this league a little bit, rough. And I'm like, well, I think DJ Moore maybe has a potential to hold that value a little bit. And obviously I don't plan on starting him. It's March. We're not starting anybody. Like, it's just a value trade at this point. Like, I think I can hold on to that value and maybe do something in before the league and all that. But yeah, he's a tough one for me. That's the only share I have in that one league across the 15 that I'm in. How many do you have, Scott, in your 40 leagues or whatever that you're in? You have any?
I do. I think pretty average, maybe 4 or 5. But I mean, listen, the touchdowns are killing him. He has 14 lifetime touchdowns, and he's had 4, exactly 4 each of the last 3 years. And if you break down, if you want to look at the Kyle Senra actually broke this down, yards per touchdown on average, he should have like 37 touchdowns lifetime. So he's like Julio Jones, basically, right? Where he gets the targets, he gets the catches, he gets the yard, he does everything, but he just doesn't score the touchdowns. And
he's just saving that regression up.
Right?
And when
he's going to have 35 touchdowns one of these seasons.
When the regression
just
hits,
keep buying, because when that hits,
not this year,
Cooper Kupp, baby.
Oh, that'd be crazy. I would love to see
Well,
that.
I just had to get that off my chest, so I'm glad we went through that. I feel
Breathe,
better.
Scott. It's okay.
You know. Uh, Heath, I'm curious, man. What who have you noticed, or you said you were talking about your rankings, right, recently? When was the last time you adjusted those? And is there anybody that you know of or feel like you're higher or lower on? You go either direction with this. I'm leaving it wide open for you.
Yeah, I try to do that once a month. I just adjusted them last week, so they're relatively fresh. I'll start at running back because I think there's one guy I'm definitely lower than the field on. I'm lower in redraft and dynasty, and it's Alvin Kamara. First off,
perfect.
It seems to me like the fact that the police officers looked at the video of him doing something and then chose to arrest him afterwards implies a little bit higher chance of guilt or suspension than a situation where we're just guessing. Maybe not, but that's the way I'm leaning. And the problem with that for me is that his only real value to me is for the 3 or 4 teams who are actually competing this year. You should not have him on your roster if you're not trying to win a championship this season. And there's really only 3 or 4 teams that have a very good chance this year. And so if you're not competing, you should be trading him. And if you are competing, you don't know if you're getting him for 15 games or 13 games or 11 games. And he's one injury away from just completely falling off of a cliff, which he's pretty much had a minor injury every year.
Well, I mean, he's a risky running back because he's a running back. I think sometimes we forget
and he's 27 though.
Well, true. I was going to get into that next. Like, he's a risky running back because he's a running back, but then he's also a 27-year-old running back. And there is some logic. And I know, Scott, you and I have talked about this because I recently did a trade where I sent Alvin Kamara away because I'm a rebuilding team entirely. Another league I took over. Well, it's that same league I was talking about. But it's like, I don't need Alvin Kamara on my team this year. There's no reason for me to have a running back in that league. I just need to be getting draft picks and getting younger. So it was a trade essentially where it was Alvin Kamara and the 212 for Juju and the 108. And I'm like, I think there's some value maybe left on the bone there, but at the same time, does it matter? You know what I mean? Like, I'm getting a rookie pick. I'm getting Juju, who I think could still have value. So for me, it felt like a good trade. But to kind of hit on it again, I mean, there is a non-zero chance that Alvin Kamara plays 0 games this year, right? Like, we don't know that yet. There are some hearings that still need to happen and all that. I'm not saying it's 100% chance. I'm saying it's non-zero. There's a difference there. And I think too, if you are like he said it perfectly, if you're a contending team, why not hold on, right? If you have the chance to ride it into the sunset and this be your winning year in fantasy, like, yeah, maybe you hold Alvin Kamara just to see how it goes. Because if you're selling him now, you're only selling him to another contender, and that might help, that might hurt. I mean, there's a whole nother, game within a game within a game in that point where it's like, do I trade this player who could be a beast to another contending team who could then beat me? You know what I mean? Like, maybe I hold on and see what I can get. But yeah, I mean, also now, as we talk about this all the time too, Scott, right now is sell running back season, right? Like, now, why do I want a running back in March? Like, there's a whole bunch of things that still have to happen. There's a whole bunch of draft and free agency. None of that has even happened yet, right? We just had the Underwear Olympics kick off when we're recording this. Like, once free agency and the draft is all settled down in May and June, and we start getting into our rookie drafts, we have a ton more info. Honestly, Alvin Kamara could be traded by then. We have no idea. And I would love to look back on this after he gets traded for Barkley, or some crazy trade happens and I can come back and be like, I called it. But that's an option too, right? Kamara is a really interesting.
Before.
I know that Robert Woods thing, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, that's one of many. Yeah.
I know, but we're not going into that's negative. We're not doing that one.
No.
I'm just saying, like, there are some talks and some logic to being like, get rid of running backs right now and buy him in August. Right?
I agree with that. You and Rocky today, we actually talked about this throughout the day, and you're both right. You win, you get the W. My only thing I will concede, but I just will say this: I have a really hard time selling players at their lowest point. So to me, I already don't have a lot of running backs as it is. Certainly not the high end ones. And so to me, to sell him right now, why? What am I getting for?
Well, that's the thing. I think that's a good point. And I think it's kind of like the DeAndre Hopkins discussion right now as well.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it might be better to wait and have him play 2 good games and then sell him.
Right.
But
Right.
Also,
there's a risk. I
if
get it.
you've held on to a running back past their age 26 season, you're just perpetually going to be selling lower and lower every year.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's not totally true, because there's a chance that he gets off to a great start this year and a contender has an injury and you get a boatload for him. But that's a really risky game to play.
It is. Well, and that's kind of where I was going to ask, even like you have to, this is all about predicting the market on him then, right? You have to say, I don't want to sell him low. What if this is his highest value for the next 3 years? Right. I mean, I'm not, and it's the what if of all of this, right? That's the whole game that we play, is trying to predict.
As a rebuilder, you're playing those odds and you're saying, yeah, I'm going to take what I get for him now. And that's, I do agree with that. You convinced me that does make sense. But if I'm competing, I'm going to hang in there. Yeah. And honestly, I might throw out a few offers.
Yeah,
I might throw out a few offers, because
I've done that. I've done that already in leagues where I know I'm contending. Yeah.
What have we been talking about here is basically 3 running backs coming in. So if we're talking, a 112, 111, somebody says, hey, I'll get out. I don't want to deal with all this drama and, see what happens. And he's old. Do I maybe throw a late first to have a potentially top 12 running back?
I'd give up 10, 11, or 12 for sure. I would. I'd have a hard time with 7, 8, 9.
I sent 8, 9,
Okay.
10. I don't know. I'm just saying, I sent 111 in my home 1 QB league for Alvin Kamara, and I got rejected with no counter within 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
And that team is a rebuilder, not a contender. So my logic is, it's a home league though, which I think adds a little flavor to it, where sometimes
sure,
people know that I mean,
what I find really helps in those
situations,
situations?
they don't want to trade with me. But,
if you could just get on the phone with them and condescendingly explain to them that they are a bad team and they shouldn't.
You're doing a bad job.
Didn't you hear my podcast?
Then they're generally much more open to your offers after that.
No, what I'm saying is I have to overpay for everything in that league, because they all know that I'm doing stuff. And I think we're all in leagues like that, where it's like, I can't get an even trade. You know what I mean? I think that's an even trade that works in most leagues, but where people know that I'm producing fantasy content and I pay attention to Dynasty. I don't have any kids and I get to just do this all year. The guy that I'm trading with has his first kid is just turned a year and has a second on the way. And so he doesn't have time to focus. So I'm sure he saw that in his emails. Like, I'm not even nope, not even, just a decline. I don't trust it, But again, to get back to the point, I agree with you, Heath. I think 10, 11, 12, I'm easily sending if I can get it. 7, 8, 9, it depends. In 1 QB, I might do 7, 8, 9. It kind of depends on how my team's looking. Yeah. Depends on what other picks I have. Depends on how young my team is, right? But I think a single first isn't bad. And like I said, getting the 108 and Juju felt like a pretty good value for me. So that's right in that wheelhouse. I mean, you're mitigating risk in that point, and that's all it's about. The pick is going to go up in value, like we said before.
Sure. Heath, do you have a guy on the other end of the spectrum here that you're maybe higher on?
I'll stick with the old dudes. It's always fun to be higher on the old dudes. Like you guys just said that Devontae Adams went in the 4th round of a startup draft.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams is still my number 3 wide receiver in Dynasty.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'll take Chase and Jefferson over him, but there's not any other wide receivers I'm taking over Adams. I still think he's the most likely guy over the next 2 seasons to be a top 2 wide receiver and maybe the number 1 wide receiver. And so I don't really believe Rodgers or he is going anywhere. And it's the nice thing is he's like in our startups, he went in the 2nd round, but that didn't include any rookies and it wasn't super flex. So that's a little bit different. Okay. But round 4, even with those other caveats, I love Adams there.
Well, he was wide receiver 14 off the board in this draft and was the first receiver on this person's team after going Taylor, Javonte, Christian McCaffrey.
So you guys are playing for 2023.
I'm just saying, like, what a monster start that team is, right? Yeah. McCaffrey's your RB3. That doesn't suck. You know what I mean? Say what you want about how risky he is. That's exactly where you want him. And Javonte, who is the the second coming of Christ right behind John Taylor. I mean, like, everybody's loving Javonte. And so he ended up getting the stack with Aaron Rodgers, as far as we know right now. So his that guy's team is Adams, Mooney, and Sutton as his 3 receivers, but he's got Rodgers, Cousins, and Mayfield as his quarterbacks. Not bad. I mean, like, that team is set to win. You know what I mean? I'm with you. Like, that is a win now team if I've ever seen one. So,
I would 100% be talking trash in the chat saying, is anybody else trying to win this year? How did you guys let me get this? Like, seriously, he starts off with those 4 players and ends up with Rodgers and Cousins as his quarterback in a super flex league.
Yeah, that's why
He doesn't even need to start a tight end each week.
Well,
I don't know who
his
it
tight
is.
end is Knox. Yeah, his tight end is Knox, which isn't bad. Yeah.
Well, it's going to suck when they sign Gronk, but besides that,
that's the thing. Right now, that's a terrific team. Like, holy smokes, that's a good team.
He can take Gronk in round 15. He'll be set.
That's so he did go 312 in mine, which was after the first 3 Devy picks, but before any rookie picks. But still,
Adams, right?
The 312 for Adams is, again, it's just, it was 3rd round reversal, so I don't think the 312, so okay, 312 regardless, minus 3 Devy picks, so essentially the 33rd player taken. And that just seems crazy when you talk about it, right? I mean, startups that's going to differ certainly. But now if you're going to make a trade for him, do you think you can buy him for this startup value that we're talking? Because I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think anybody's selling him for that. Now, maybe if you took over a rebuilding team and he's your only piece and you're maybe, again, we're back to the Kamara conversation. Let's get some youth and some picks, but man, he's 29?
I'm not sure you can buy him for that cost.
Right.
But I think you can definitely buy him for less than wide receiver 3. You can pretty easily buy him for wide receiver 7 or 8.
Sure.
So it's somewhere in the middle, probably.
Okay. Well, it's a little foreshadowing maybe for our Find Me a Trade segment. So
right. I wanted to add this with Adams. I think a lot of this comes, especially in a startup, and this is again where the difference is in startup versus trading. In a startup, your mindset is building your team for the next 10 years, even though that never happens. Right. Like everybody is like, I want to make sure that my team is locked in. In a startup, I'm building it from scratch. I have everybody to pick from. In a trade, that's not the same. In a trade, you already have a team that is either win now or not. And you're trying to take those assets and make it better. And there's incremental value adds that you can do to your team. So I don't think in a trade, in a league that's already going, someone has Adams and they paid a higher price than that to get him. And that sunk cost fallacy occurs to all humans. And so it's like, he was my 1st round pick. I'm not trading him for less than that, even though that was 3 years ago. You know what I mean? Like that kind of happens in a trade, but in a startup, it's very different. So the only thing I would say to this is I think it actually helps in startup trade talks, as in if you're in the 3rd round of your startup league and you're trading picks and you're trying to figure out, do I trade up, do I trade back? I think this is a prime case. All of this discussion really trade back, right? Like there is a ton of value. There are a ton of people reaching for players. And again, we're just talking about specific leagues. This isn't ADP. This isn't a broad strokes thing, but there is a lot of value to be had later. And I think we all want to trade back. And so finding someone willing to trade up can be tricky. So again, it depends on the league and all that. But if you can get Adams as the 14th receiver in the 4th round of your startup, and you'll be happy with that. I know Heath would love it as wide receiver 3. And I don't think you're alone on that, Heath. I really don't. I think there's a lot of people that still value him as a top 5 dynasty receiver. And it's just his startup value is, because of the question marks, is falling. That's all it is.
No doubt. Heath, we want to respect your time, and we're coming up on an hour here, which is pretty much the halfway point for us. But no, seriously, anybody else you want to throw in here at the end before we get you out of here?
I don't know. Like, I'd like to throw a tight end in there, but I do think I'll just real quick a cheap young tight end, Cole Kmet. I like you mentioned the Muth earlier, and everybody loves him, but I don't think there's much difference between those two at all. And I might actually prefer Kmet a little bit. And he's just
at cost for sure.
Dirt cheap.
Yep.
Awesome. So go get him and hold him for the summer and see if maybe this fall it's Justin Fields that's holding him.
Love it.
Yeah, for
Great
sure.
choice.
I love it. That is, man, Heath is such a pro. He knows exactly how to go out. I mean, nobody's disagreeing with you right now. Like, it's just
Man.
Boom, easy money.
Can't do any better than that. Yeah.
I've been married for a long time. I know how to end the conversation in a peaceful way. Let's no more debate, no more questions. I agree with you. Yes.
Can we go to bed now? Yeah. Exactly. Are we done? Jeez. Yeah.
Guys, check out Heath Cummings on CBS, at Heath Cummings SR on Twitter, at Heath's Meat on Instagram. Go follow that just for the name. I mean, that is just beautiful. And then make sure to bring it up in every conversation when your friends come over, with your wife. Make sure, did you check out Heath's Meat tonight? I mean, that's amazing.
Well,
the only
question I only wanted to ask one more.
Andrew,
is that I know you're big on Untapped. I'm big on Untapped as well. I know you've got a ton more beers than me, but what is your number one go-to beer? We talked about your meat, but what's your number one beer to have while you're standing by the grill, just before we get you out of here?
That changes a lot. I'll give 2, because there's one for grilling, there's one for smoking. Because smoking, you might be there for 12 hours, and you can't drink the same kind of beer that you drink when you're grilling.
So true.
So for grilling, I will go with Cigar City Florida Man. It's a double IPA, and I am a Florida man, so there you go. For smoking, the all day drinking, there's I don't know if you've had the all day IPA from Founders.
Yep.
They now have an all day haze. Holy cow! It's a hazy IPA. It's like 4.5%, and you can just. I used to think they were kind of ripoffs, the session IPAs, because you're paying the same price and you don't get as much alcohol. But now I'm old and I like to spend 12 hours day drinking, so the low percentage beers are good.
Preach. No, that's awesome. That's good advice.
Smarter, not harder.
For all the junkies out there that are addicted to something, we've given you plenty of options tonight to get addicted to things. So this is terrific. I like it.
Meat, beer, Debbie. Hey, we've got it all. Heath, thank you so much. We really appreciate you, my man.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Thanks, Heath. Take care.
All right. Well, that I would say, I was going to say now for the main event, but really, how do you follow Heath's Meat? I mean,
you can't,
man.
That was awesome.
What a great guy, though. Really enjoyed talking to him before the show too. So,
yeah.
Cool. Well, let's get me into the old find me a trade here. We have our buddy Nick Aiken at Nick Aiken on the Twitter machine. It's a sleeper league. 12 team super flex, half PPR with the half point premium for the tight end. So half PPR, full point for tight ends. We're starting 9, quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, tight end, a couple flex spots, although one's a wide receiver tight end flex spot, which is interesting. And then a super flex, 17 bench, 5 taxi. So again, 12 team, but start 9 and 17 bench. So it's a little shallower. This is the second year of the league, and it's, I don't know about you, Andrew. I had a little bit of a tough time because sometimes this looks like most of my typical second year leagues where you have a lot of teams that went young and they have all the picks and they have all the young players and they're not trading you for your old guy, and then you have the other teams that are in the same boat as you. And so are you going to try to swap around players? I don't know. So I did have a tough time figuring that one out, but let's read what Nick said. And then
I've got the league ready to pull up whenever you're done. Yep.
Okay. So he won the year 1. So that's great. Come right in. Now you're playing with house money. You get that win. But he does have a pretty old roster. So obviously he wants to repeat, wants to go for 2 in a row. He says, my depth at running back is questionable, and with little draft capital in the next 2 drafts, I might need to look at shifting from some older players to keep my window open. I'm a Rams fan, so it'd be tough to move on from the Stafford Cup stack, even if he knows Cooper Kupp is quite the sell right now. And so, we definitely agree there. Andrew, if you want to go through the roster, and then you can jump right into your trade.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. So I'll start off here. It is a super flex, but it is start 9, like you said. So when you're super flex and start 9, you only have to start 7 non-quarterbacks. I mean, you kind of, you're looking at studs if you can everywhere. So I like this team a lot. I definitely see why he won. His quarterbacks to start with here, he's got Justin Herbert and Matt Stafford. Not bad at all. Running backs, you got Christian McCaffrey, David Montgomery as your starting 2 running backs. Again, not bad at all. McCaffrey had a rough year, so I'm impressed that he could win with that. But again, Montgomery had a terrific year, so it probably helped out. Receivers, he's got Hill and Kupp. Again, 2 of the top 5 dynasty assets and receivers, solid. And then, Devontae Adams and Brandon Cooks. Again, just a solid wide receiver room. I mean, there's plenty of depth there. Tight end at the starter spot, at least for now, is Tyler Higbee. If we go down to the bench, you've got Marcus Mariota and Tyler Huntley. All right, so we might have a little shallow QB options there. Next on running backs, you got the one and only Cordero Patterson. Obviously, that helped him win too, I think. That was one of those picks that probably wasn't anything, but showed up and helped dominate in the weeks that McCaffrey was out. Then he's got Mostert and Wilson on the RBs for San Fran, which, again, I'm sure one of those guys started here and there, but not mostly like Mostert. He's got Hines and Gore and Funk as kind of rounding out his running back room. I mean, Derek Gore, not Frank. Let's be clear. He doesn't have the ageless wonder. But again, it kind of drops off a cliff there at running back.
Yeah.
Receiver, he's got Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas, Corey Davis, Olamide Zaccheaus, Ashton Doolin, Westbrook Akine. So again, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry on the bench. That's not bad. That is not a bad receiver room.
Thomas, Landry, and Davis basically didn't play last year. I mean,
all three of them were out, and he still somehow got a win. I love this. This is a great team. Tight ends after Higbee, we mentioned before, he's got Jonnu Smith, who is supposed to be good, and John Bates, who might be good. And then on the taxi squad, you got a couple guys here, Brevin Jordan, Kylan Hill, and is this, it doesn't even, Austin Watkins. I don't even remember an Austin Watkins. Had to look that one up. And then again, to kind of hit on the draft picks, he's got a 2022 second and third and a fourth and a fourth and a fourth and a fourth. Like, I don't know what you're going to do with all those fourths in 2022, but
squad, hopefully, I guess.
That or packaging them and get to a third, or a packaging, we'll talk about some of that.
Definitely.
And then in 24, 23, he's got nothing
in 23.
And then 24, his full four. So again, interesting. It's an interesting roster. It's definitely top heavy. Yeah. So I'm looking at this, and my first thought, looking at the receivers and how that room is just stacked, I'm like, okay, so he can definitely lose a receiver and probably be okay. In my mind, I look at this like Cordero Patterson probably still has some value to the right manager, but after that, he's a little light at running back behind McCaffrey and Cooks. And Montgomery. He doesn't have a first round pick, so he's probably not going to get one of those other running backs. But I want out from Christian McCaffrey before the wheels fall off all the way. So my trade was to send CMC and Brandon Cooks to a team named Coverway for Trey Lance and the 211. Now, the logic here, there's a little deeper here. On Sleeper, you can actually see what teams are interested in what players. And I think I want to bring this up just to kind of explain, if anyone's not played on Sleeper, this is an interesting little twist that they allow for. It's not loading, but you can actually put players on trade block, and you can put interested in players. So you can mark when you're interested in someone else's player, which I think is an interesting idea to do, right? The bonus then is looking at this and logging into the team and saying, okay, well, what do we got? I can go to the full trade menu here. And looking at this, it looks like there was someone that showed interest in Coverway. It's not showing it right now, but Coverway showed interest in CMC. I'm like, okay, so if there's anyone to trade CMC to, it's most likely Coverway, right? So that was my thought. Mm-hmm. The other thing then is, of course, we want to make sure that we look at the quarterback position, at least in my mind, because he's only got those two quarterbacks, and in Superflex you're going to need that. It's going to be two. You're not going to last.
Totally agree.
So I think getting Lance is going to be tough, but CMC and Cooks both have value. Lance and 211 to see what kind of receiver you can get there. And then I would also probably send another trade, something like a Devontae Adams for something, which again we'll get into. So I felt like this would be a good trade to partner up and kind of pair up with another trade. But Scott, what do you think? As the only other person to tell me my trade sucks, what do you think about that trade?
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it a lot. I completely, there someday I'm going to have to maybe try to do like my own little study on this. I don't have anything statistical to back it up, but I will say this time and time again that it's so hard to win Superflex championships without two great quarterbacks, or at least a good room of quarterbacks. It has to be one of the strengths on your team. It's very rare that you see teams without that win the championship. Sometimes you see teams that have great quarterbacks and not much else, and they somehow got it done, but you rarely see a great team without quarterbacks that got it done. And
just real quick to interrupt on that, the thing I'm going to hit on even harder is it's start 9. 2 of your 9 starters are quarterbacks. It makes even more value sense there. If you were starting 13, you could maybe get away with a little weakness here and there and find it elsewhere. But in a start 9, when you have 2 of them, a lot of the start 9 leagues that I'm in are only 1 QB. right? Where it's like you're trying to find depth elsewhere, and QBs in one QB leagues are already kind of who knows what. But when it's start 9 and 2 of them are quarterbacks, you need studs at that. And I like Stafford and Herbert, don't get me wrong, but on a bye week or an injury, your team goes from first to last quick. So I would love to get another, like a younger even for Stafford if he retires in the next year or two, or playing that youth angle. Herbert's fine, but that way you get Lance, which I don't know if that manager would do that, right? Like that's the other catch we come into is like, that's a fair trade according to DLF and everything else. Like, but I'd be willing to add a little more to the CMC side, sweeten the deal. But that guy showed interest in CMC. Maybe he's showing interest to buy low and not to really pay full value. So I mean, there's a lot of different games.
But there's some. It's a warm lead, as they say. You know, there's some sort of interest there.
Bingo. Yep. So what was your trade? And then I'll do Rockies at the end.
Okay. So I looked at it from this. You know, looking at the team overall, basically he utilized his draft capital to get production to win a title. And listen, if you're gonna do it, you got to win. So it's all good. I don't care what trades he made.
It's all worth it if you win.
You won. So that's
you have
it.
No draft capital, but you got the title. It doesn't matter.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. So now here's the issue though. Trying to repeat. Of course you want to repeat. Who doesn't? Basically, I think he punted the tight end position, and there's really no depth. You know, you have two great starters at quarterback and running back, but no depth. So what happens when you lose just one of those guys? All that has to happen is one guy gets hurt and another guy has a little bit of an off season, and you're done. You're not gonna win. So it takes a certain amount of luck to get that championship. But I feel like this team may have gotten a little overachieved just because there were so many young teams. Looking through these rosters, it's literally like half the league knew they had no shot at winning. So if you have 6 playoff teams and 6 teams are out of it, it's pretty much like, okay, you're in the playoffs, so somebody's got to win.
It's bipolar. The league is very bipolar. It's a bunch of great teams and a bunch of rebuilding teams. There's really not a lot of middle. I agree. Right. And so if you have any sort of production, you're going to be in the playoffs. And then once you're in the playoffs, you might as well go for it. So, I mean, I love the strategy and I love getting it done. So that's awesome. I am not knocking that in any way. I just don't think the team is strong overall, but the strength is the wide receivers. And so if you can move a wide receiver, and this is why I wanted to kind of talk to Heath a little bit more on the Devontae Adams side. And then I brought up more of like, well, we see how late he's going in a startup, but is he still holding that trade value? Because to me, I would go to the team Johnny Moxon, and I would say I would offer it either way, Hill or Adams. Hill just had a birthday, so he's 1 year older. And also he's negotiating a contract extension. So that could give him a little value that may be able to trade him. If somebody, if he feels like Adams is the stud, maybe you go with Adams. If he feels like Hill, he'd rather have Hill on his roster, you go with Hill. And I'm going to try to buy a guy that I think could give you 80% of that production. And then you get a piece on top. And so I said Hill or Adams for CeeDee Lamb. And then your choice of Jimmy G or Daniel Jones, and then throw in Alberto as well. Because I want to move down a tier at wide receiver, but get the youth. I want to add a third quarterback, and I want to just get a dart throw in at tight end that, Noah Fant goes down. Alberto has shown he can do something. I also don't think that team extends Fant just because they've extended everyone else already. So Alberto might be in the spot there to get a couple of years. So I just, again, a dart throw tight end. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on him, but it's more about let's move down a tier and fill out your roster with. I don't really care if the guy's like, hey, Jimmy G is going to go to the Steelers. No, I'm not going to trade him. Okay, you know what? Throw in Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones sucks, right? But at least I know he's starting next year. And so for me, as my third quarterback, if Stafford gets hurt, if Herbert misses a stretch, I've got somebody to plug in there and get some production. Because if you're looking at your bench, I mean, if Herbert or Stafford goes down, who are you starting? Nyheim Hines? I mean, who are you starting? Yep.
So
great point.
Plus, there is those 3 wide receivers on the bench that you mentioned that basically didn't play last year. You have to assume at least a couple of them come back. So that'll help your depth a little bit at wide receiver. So I'm not worried about necessarily, oh, I got to keep hammering those wide receivers. No, you have the strength there. Let's get some youth at wide receiver. And then just you're more rounding out your roster. So these are trades that they're not sexy, they're maybe not even fun, but they're giving you those additional pieces to get through this 17 game season, get through all the chaos that happens, and be able to be there at the end to give yourself a shot to win that championship.
So I like this trade a lot, and I want to kind of piggyback on what you just said, actually, and that's sometimes there are definitely a lot of people that play Dynasty that want the best player in the trade, and all they do is consolidate. And that's their entire goal.
Yeah,
I'm not getting the best player. Right.
Fair.
That's not a bad idea. I'm not hating on that as a general thesis. I'm saying sometimes you're helping your team to go against that every now and then if it's the right deal. And I think this is that kind of trade where it's like I'm downgrading from Adams to Lamb. In my mind, I would like to trade Adams more than Hill because he's a year older. He's a little bit more, I guess, confusing about where his future is going to be and all that. I think Hill stays. I don't think that they're going to do anything to break up that trio that they've got there. But I think if you're sending Adams, who is, again, some people value as the wide receiver 3, right? Like Heath was just saying. So if you can get wide receiver 3 value for Adams, why not do that and add some depth? Because I agree with you. I think this team needs a little bit of depth. Mine was in a similar vein, but yours is even more, it's kind of more broad, but at the same time, it's more of a Band-Aid at QB. Right, like all you're looking for is a 1-year rental. Let's just kick that can down the road and figure out where we go. So I don't mind
either one of those guys could be more. We don't know, but I just if the goal is for this year, let's figure out this year, and then we'll figure out after that.
And I think that's part of what makes this trade kind of like a grinding trade. This is one of those trades that you do to make your team better. That's not flashy. That you don't put on Twitter to get results. You don't really boast about it. You don't really talk. You just like. You send it, it gets done. No one, you brag about it. You're just like, hey, I had to do this to make my team better. I lost the best player, right? They're getting Devontae Adams. Oh my gosh, that's what a stud. But I'm adding some depth. I'm bolstering my chance to win another title. And I think that sometimes that work goes unnoticed as it should. And I think that's a perfect trade for that kind of team where you're trying to repeat. Well, you got to do some work. I think a lot of times teams that win sit on their laurels and they don't do enough and they just kind of, see what I can do. Let's see if I can run it back with the same squad. That doesn't happen. You have to keep working. You can't sit still. And especially in this league when there's so many, I don't know, up and down type of teams. You know what I mean? It's all over the place. So yeah, I think that's a terrific trade.
All right. Let's in the comments, Ridley Truther says Mills is a good, easy trade for quarterback too. And I agree with that. He's probably the starter next year. Pep Hamilton sticking around as the OC. He's already familiar. He's already in the system. I agree. If you can get him cheap, I just sold a couple of shares because I had more shares of Davis Mills than any other quarterback.
Yeah,
so I wanted to divest a few, but yeah, I'm definitely hanging on to quite a few because hey, he's there. He's there next year, and those quarterbacks are valuable.
All right, so I'll get into Rocky's trade, and I think it's similar to yours in a way, but I think it also kind of hits on what we're just talking about. It's a splitting up of Devontae Adams. So his was to trade Devontae Adams to Watson's legal team, which I think is, again, great team name. I think that's terrific given the context. But he trades Devontae Adams for Antonio Gibson and Cortland Sutton. So again, another Denver player, but to add to that running back room, I like that, right? You're downgrading from Adams to Gibson. You're adding Sutton to kind of backfill that position. You've got some players you can drop. I'm not worried about adding that extra spot, even in your trade. I was going to say that too. Like, I don't mind adding some extra players. All of those are better than Nyheim Hines in a sense, or, Raheem Mostert, if he's too old and hurt, you could probably trade him for a pick. You don't have a lot of picks unless those fourths actually pay off. Who knows? But point I'm getting at it, and I'll read some of what Rocky put. He is just like he is on the podcast. He's very verbose in his words. I love that about the man. And again, we can talk about him because he's not here. It's perfect. But he said, I think now is a good time to get out on Adams as he's still valued very highly despite his age and QB uncertainty. I think this is a way you could do it and still contend. Agreed. On the same page. Rocky said he's still very high on Gibson as a talent. And while he often talks about them not using him enough in the passing game, he does have 78 catches the last 2 years and had 3 5-catch games towards the end of the season. 2 of those, McKissick was out, but JD is also an unrestricted free agent this year and could be gone. If he's gone, the sky's the limit on Gibson, especially if they can upgrade a QB. Again, fully agree with all of that. And I think what Rocky tends to do is he looks at the upside and saying 3 5-catch games, that's 5 free points. You know what I mean? Like that's huge if Gibson can keep that kind of pace up. And then he also says, I think Sutton is a great buy right now. His value is super low, but might also get a QB upgrade, which obviously Denver is one of those spots that Rodgers could go. That helps everybody. But even with horrible quarterbacking, has had far more boom games than Jerry Jeudy, which again, we all agree with that. We've seen it.
Yep.
And then, like you said, getting 2 assets with room to grow in value, add some depth, get younger, and may not lose a ton of points in the process. I agree. Like the Adams to Gibson comparison point wise, maybe 5 points a week ish. And again, I'm estimating, I'm not using stats. It's just like, it feels like that to me. And then Sutton, I think, helps with that. And you've got a ton of receivers anyway. But then for Watson's legal team, it would make some sense too, because he has a contending roster, but it's also pretty weak at receiver after Debo, and he's got Cook and Mixon after trading Gibson. Right. So he's still got running back depth, and it helps him at receiver to kind of consolidate there, which that's what we would most likely recommend for that team is, keep your running backs, add some receiver, but trade some of your depth. So, and he finishes with Adams is miles better than anyone else he could get at wide receiver too. I completely agree. So again, I think Rocky hit this on the head, and it kind of piggybacks on a lot of what we said this whole episode is that Adams is going undervalued. He's going later in startups. He's getting some disrespect. There's some QB uncertainty, some future uncertainty. We don't know if he's on the Packers next year. I think there are some people that take that uncertainty and run with it in the positive and say, oh, he's definitely coming back. I'm going to buy low. And sending Gibson, who had some injury history, and he's on a team that's, maybe not sure where they're going as a team. And I don't like the commander's name. Who knows? I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why you might not like Gibson, right? So I thought that was a solid trade. What did you think about that one? Now, what did you think about Rockies?
Yeah, I mean, it's along the same lines of mine. Is let's move down a tier and let's get somebody else. To me, I'm a Cortland Sutton guy. I think there's maybe a little bit too much risk there, except for the fact, just on the trade on its own. But then when you factor in the roster and you see all the other wide receivers he has, that is a worthwhile trade to make, right? Because you could take that risk. Sutton could just fit in your wide receiver room somewhere. He doesn't have to necessarily even be a starter right away. And if he hits, obviously you won, right? So, I mean, I definitely like that. And it fits perfectly with the overall theme of our show today, which is essentially when everyone's talking about rookie picks and everything's so crazy with all these rookies and rookie value and all these, remember, the rookie picks are at their highest value. That means the veterans are at their lowest value. So when you're trying to win right now, or even if you're trying to gain some value on your roster, don't forget to look at those vets. Look at where they're going in startups. Use that in your trade negotiations and get those players that actually produce. Everybody wants the shiny new object. Everybody wants rookies. I get it. I do too. I love it. But I also would prefer production and championships. So let's make some sense.
This is the perfect week to start trading away rookie picks if you're contending. And I don't know if I've said this specifically. I had it in a conversation on Twitter at some point last week where I said, somebody was asking me about a trade last week and it involved rookie picks. And I was like, just hold a week. Like, what do you need it now for? Like in a week, all these rookies will start making a ton of splash. And the Underwear Olympics will be kicking off and everybody will start talking about Treylon Burks and all these names. And like we just said, once you start putting names to the picks, it becomes a different game, right? I always tell people too, like, almost every time people ask me, and we've talked about it on here, why now? Why am I making this trade today? Well, that Alvin Kamara trade we talked about, I feel like he's got a hearing coming up. There's a chance that could go south or he gets back in the news at all. And maybe that just brings people, reminds them of the fact that he's not doing, who knows, right? So the other catch then is at this point, why not wait until you're on the clock? If you're just trading away a rookie pick, like the value is going to increase as we get closer and closer to the draft. And then once you make the pick, it drops dramatically, as my younger sibling would say. There's this weird crash that happens as soon as the pick is made, because as soon as it becomes a player, it's no longer a boat, right? Like it's no longer, it could be a boat. Like it's that, nope, there's no upside anymore. It's locked in. So I think there's a lot of times where we see players and picks and everything where, you can make a trade that you wouldn't be able to make today. You could make that exact trade in a month or two, whenever you're on the clock in your rookie draft, and feel like a big winner then and a big loser now. So like, let's just hold tight. Hold the value where you can. And I know you like to do this, Scott, with your portfolio trading. If you see a descending asset, trade them. Rookie picks are not descending. So the only way I would send a rookie pick, and I shouldn't say only, but in most cases, I would send rookie picks if I feel like I'm getting someone else, a player or another pick or a 23th pick or some sort of thing that's accruing at the same rate or better. I'm not going to send an ascending asset for a descending asset. Ironically, every trade I try to make is the opposite, which means someone out there is accepting that trade. So I'm hoping they don't listen to this podcast and listen to my logic, right? So those of you that are listening still at an hour 20 something, if you're still paying attention, if you're still a junkie, this is where we can help you, is those little things. Just hold. I know it's fun. Rookie fever is great. Don't go trading for rookie picks unless you feel like you're getting rid of a descending asset. And Devontae Adams, to me, is a declining asset. Maybe not quickly, but it's still like Rocky said, you're trading one declining asset for two ascending ones that gives you a better chance to boost your value. That's the goal. That's all we look for in March. Don't worry about your lineups. Just worry about value.
Exactly.
We can say it every week, Scott.
And we will.
I know.
We will continue to say it because it's true and it's important. And I mean, that's what we do. That's what we live. So that's what we're going to pass on. Right. Yep. Yeah. Hey, I mean, I haven't said this in a while, but it's the end of our show sheet. So that's the end of our show.
There you go.
All right. Well, with that, the amazing Heath Cummings, can't thank him enough. That was awesome. Follow him at Heath Cummings SR on Twitter. Check him out on CBS. He's literally on your TV screens, 4 months, 5 months out of the year, at minimum. So amazing dude. Let's see. Rocky is shit, I forget already.
At Dynasty FF Addict
Dynasty
on Twitter.
FF Addict. Got it. At Andrew Hall FF. I'm at Scott Sidlow. Let's see. Subscribe and follow the DAP Network, whether on YouTube, anywhere you're listening. I don't get the whole YouTube thing because I don't watch podcasts. I just listen to them. So I always forget to talk about that. But yeah, you can actually watch us, which you could see my facial expressions, like when we're like, the fuck is he talking about? And so, obviously that's a lot more fun when it's Rocky and I can just kind of, give him shit through my facial expressions. So I think that might be fun for people. Yeah. But anyway, subscribe, rate, and review. Definitely reach out. Send us your FMAT submissions. International peeps. That is just so fascinating to me.
Yes.
I struck up a friendship with a guy. I'll give him a shout out, Barney from Iceland. And I mean, we have gotten so much beyond fantasy football, just talking about culture and life and just, how dumb Americans are in general. And right. And, but it's just so fascinating. So international peeps, hit us up, give us your story. Like, how did you get into football and how do you follow it? And like, let's talk about that. I just think that's so fascinating. But yeah, so Andrew, I just want to, hey, real quick, I want to just shout out to the homies in the comments. We appreciate all you guys. Always great content for the show. And of course, we love you guys chiming in, and we'll always try to get to your stuff too when we can. But yeah, with that, Andrew, you want to take us out?
Oh, I'm so glad we got to talk to Heath. I've listened to him for years, and it was great to hear from him. And he's a great mind with a lot of comedy to it. And it was
great that he's what we thought he is.
Yep.
Like
he's exactly what you expect.
Like that is so cool. Sometimes you get these people on, you're like, oh, I've watched this guy forever, and then he's a total asshole, or whatever, right? But yeah. So I just want to say that, Heath, thank you for being you, man. Like, we appreciate that. You were awesome. Thank you.
Well, and I also like that he's got other hobbies. You know what I mean? Like, come on, like some of us just have fantasy. Well, hey, I like Untapped. I like trying new beers. That's where I remember Heath mentioning that on the CBS podcast. So, I got to do a virtual cheers with him on Untapped tonight. So that was nice. It was a, kind of a bucket list item. That was great. So yeah, really, really appreciate Heath coming on. And I always say to people too, we talked about it. You mentioned it too. Like, find me a trade. If you've got a league that is looking for a trade, you can find that through our link tree at Dynasty Junkies on Twitter. Make sure you follow us on there. Our link tree is linked obviously there. And then you can go through that to find the submission form. We don't always post it because we've got plenty in the hopper, but if you have a league that you really feel like, hey, here's what's going on. I always tell people too, if you want to get bumped to the front of the line, follow, subscribe, rate, review, do all that stuff. Send us a note on DMs on Twitter and say, hey, I got a league. I got a rookie draft coming up. Like, we'll see what we can do. We have a couple of episodes coming up. There's actually one in, I think it's 2 weeks, right? Where we're going to do a lot more. Just the three of us. We're going to talk about
pretty much
trades.
A full show. Yeah.
Yep. So we're going to be getting through some of our backlog on some of those. We try to get everybody once before we go back and do. Some people submit 2 or 3 or 4, which is fine, but we want to make sure we get everybody a chance. But if you've got any of those, feel free to submit. other than that, that's just, I love this. I love having time to talk with you, Scott, every week. Even though you're 6'5", it's a good time. And with that, Junkies out.